And we're live.
Hi, everybody. I am Candace Huber. I'm the owner of Tubby and Coo's Mid-City Bookshop in New Orleans, Louisiana. I am very excited that Tubby and Coo's gets to host this event tonight, and I hope you all enjoy. I'm sure you all know what you're here for, but you are here to watch this amazing conversation between two of my favorite authors, and so I'm super, like fangirling out. But we have Brent Weeks, who is the author of the Lightbringer series. It started with The Black Prism. The newest book is called The Burning White. And also Evan Winter, who is the author of the Burning series, which started with The Rage of Dragons. And his newest book is The Fires of Vengeance. I'm super excited for y'all to watch this conversation with these authors. I'm excited to watch as well. To remind everyone, you can, of course, buy books. There is a link at the bottom of your screen that you can click to buy books from us. We do have signed book plates as well. So if you order the book from us, we will give you a signed copy. We'll put that signed book plate in there. So please, if you enjoy any of this, go ahead and buy books. And I will turn it over. Just to let you know, too, how Crowdcast works, you can type into the chat, which should be on the right side of your screen. If you type questions there, we will moderate and get to them towards the end of this. And I think that is about it. So I will turn it over to Brent and Evan. Thank you all so much, and I'm so excited to watch this.
All right. Well, thank you, Candace, and thanks for having us at your virtually at Tubby and Coo's. Evan, this is our first time meeting, and I mean, I've been following you on Twitter for a while now, and your book has made your first book, your second book's coming soon, I think, has made quite a splash. I was
Brent, we're getting some cutting out on your audio.
Since I haven't.
Oops, and Brent is gone.
We're
gonna try.
And I gotta.
Are you still there, Brent? Sorry, folks, about the technical issues. We're going to try to get Brent back up here. In the meantime, Evan, do you want to give everyone a little bit of information about Rage Dragons and Fires of Vengeance and what they're about?
Sure. And my laptop just told me that it's reminded me that my chat with Brent Weeks is right now. So thank you, laptop, for that very timely announcement. A little bit better late than never, I guess, on the laptop. But yeah, my first book is The Rage of Dragons, and it is basically Ender's Game meets Red Rising, or as Orbit says, Game of Thrones meets Gladiator. It's a tale of revenge. It's a lot of sword fighting. It's kind of almost epic fantasy / swords and sorcery. And it also is sort of talking about themes of violence and cycles of violence in a secondary world that's analogous to Africa. So very, very excited to be here with Brent and hoping he does back in. I know that where he is today, it's there are fires not too far from him, and there was a bit of a warning he might have sort of down the power in the area. So there was a bit of concern about that, but hopefully that's not the case, and that he is able to pop back in shortly. Yeah, and at the moment, I feel like I'm like one of those people on a news station and it's live, and I have to now fill time, and I have no idea how to do that or what to talk about. But I see that Brent's coming back in, so I have been saved.
Okay, can you hear me, Evan?
I can hear you perfectly.
That was weird. It was like going to the spirit world, because I could see you, I could hear you guys, and then you're like, and Brent is gone. He is not here. And I was like trying to reach through like a ghost. And no, guys, I'm still here. Anyway, sorry, everyone. Thanks for your patience about our technical difficulties here. I don't know how much of this came through before. But I was just saying, Evan, that when I was researching you, because we've not met in person, and we follow each other on Twitter, and I've read about you, but when I was researching you, I found that you have probably the best bio that I've ever read of an author, and it made me very jealous, and it made me take some notes. You have these wonderful hooks for great interviews all the way throughout. You're the cinematographer whose work has been viewed 500 million times. Your bio with moves from Guyana to London to Africa with mobsters and mistaken identity and con men and then just naturally segueing into Robert Jordan and everybody else you've read. But I'm not going to ask you about all those things because I imagine you've gotten hit with those before. And I assume you get questions on how you got snatched from the world of self-publishing. And I'm not going to ask you about that. And I'm not going to ask about your starred review from Publishers Weekly or your starred review from Booklist, which I'm not at all jealous about.
Oh my goodness.
And I guess why we're talking today is first of all because of the numerous the many blurbs I saw that you've picked up, also not jealous. Numerous of them talk about your rising tension in your books and have quotes about impossible to put down, unputdownable. So that tells me that you're exactly the right person for me to be talking with about pacing and so I want to start with maybe what's a false dichotomy. Does fast pacing come naturally to you as a writer, or is it the product of relentless hard work?
Well, thank you very much for the not intro. That was absolutely amazing. And and the question. I think that for me, my main goal when I sat down to write, and it was my first novel, was to try and tell a story that I wanted to read. Was to try and tell a story that I would love from page one to page end. That was my main goal, because I didn't think I was going to self-publish. I knew that. I didn't approach traditional publishing at all. I went straight to self-publishing. So I had no idea if it would just be me and my mom who read the book. And that would have been totally fine, because my mom's a big fan. But so my goal was just to tell a story that I would absolutely love. And I guess what I tried to do is tell something that had all of my favorite parts of fantasy in it, and I tried to take out all the parts that I didn't enjoy as much. And so it's very particular and peculiar to me that maybe that's what adds to the pacing. For example, I don't tend to read description very, very well. I can enjoy it on occasion, but when epic fantasy sort of gets sort of knocked on a little bit for long passages of description, and I kind of skim read those a little bit. So I try to do my best to describe things as I would need to see them as a reader, but then no more. And I think that helps a little bit. And another main thing I did is, in my conception of the story, I tried to think of some of my favorite experiences with stories, and they are episodic television with arcs, like consistent arcs all the way through. And then I thought about what bothered me the most in those, and that was typically when I had, those sort of either bottle episodes or episodes that didn't progress the overall arc. And so I broke the story down into episode chunks, and I think of it almost as a TV show going from beginning to end in a season. And so wherever I would sort of look at it in editing and say, this is one of those filler episodes, I would do my very best to trim all of that out, so that I could go and each individual episode was something that I would love and feel was time well spent sitting there and enjoying it. That was my sort of thinking around it. How do you do it in terms of pacing? I mean, you have tons of big fight scenes, lots of set pieces, sieges, battles, all those awful things that you have to plan out and write. How do you do
it? Well, I think to a certain extent it's natural. I think I have a natural bent the same way you have, of okay, the stuff that I find boring when I'm a reader, I'm just going to skip that stuff. Oh, the wind was blowing off the heath and the heather was, in the fourth month, and this is what it looked like, and there were little birds, and I'm going to tell you about the birds, and I'm just like, okay, what? Like where's the stuff that matters here? Which is not to say it's not to say I have a wooden soul, like there's certainly a place for poetic description, and there's a time for that, but especially when I was young, I wanted to be well, what matters here? And so I had a fairly low boredom threshold. It's okay, nothing's happened that has pushed this book forward. That upsets me after a while. No, I can't say that.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Fine. I'm saying it because you egged me on, and there's nobody here who's going to tell on us, right? Well, I remember reading Robert Jordan and one of his books, and I love Robert Jordan. Like one of his books later in the series, like I was actually I was absolutely captivated as I went through. And because he's such a good storyteller, he could kind of get away with this. And like chapter by chapter, I'm going through. I'm like, well, and then it was only like when I finished the book, I'm like, I don't think like a whole lot happened in that book. And then I was upset, So like, I want stuff to happen that matters in the books I read, and so I sort of am constantly driving forward, and I do a little mix of so some of that is natural. It's just like, okay, if I get bored easily, I'm going to assume my readers get bored easily, and I'm going to keep you engaged. And then some of it is being like, okay, where is this going? Like it's outlining stuff a little bit, and it's saying, why is this necessary, or is this a filler episode, or like I think it, like, is this a filler episode gets to be in fantasy. It gets to be a pretty dicey question, because like the things that a scene can accomplish aren't just like, does this help decide if the castle burns down at the end? It's like, okay, does this establish emotional stakes for this character a lot more? Does this deepen our understanding of the world? Does this make all of this matter more to me? Are actually valid questions, so you can look at a scene and be like, well, it doesn't actually it doesn't actually answer the question about whether the siege is going to work or not, but it does these other things, and so you have to for me, I have to play those against each other. When you are when you're structuring your books sort of episodically, are you doing that with an outline? Are you looking at that beforehand, or are you more of an organic writer?
Yeah, I'm very not organic in that sense. I think that was my natural inclination, was to pants. And when I was growing up, writing things for either, high school, or just in any sort of English class, or just writing just for myself, I would typically just pants. But then I got into filmmaking, and primarily music videos, and I was a director and cinematographer there. And the main thing was that time on set is so incredibly expensive. And also the product that you're making, if it's a commercial, it's 30 seconds, right? If it's a music video, it's 3.5 minutes. If it's a movie, okay, it's usually 2 hours in length. And so they have to do what we tend to do in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 pages in 2 hours or whatever. So when they're building character, when they're building plot, when they're building the world, every single line of dialogue and every single scene is meant to do triple duty. It's meant to build on all of those things. And so maybe it's odd to do this, but because my experience was in the filmmaking world primarily, and that was a lot of where my training came from, I tried to bring what I considered to be the lessons from that world into my writing. And so I tried to create the story in the same way that I would have created it if I was trying to direct a movie, write and direct a movie. And I think that works for a lot of people. It works for me definitely as a reader. And another part of my overall thinking about the way I approach this is I can only guess at what other readers might want, but I do know what I like and what I want. So my goal was to write the perfect story for me, and hope that either I, through self-publishing, could find, or Orbit through traditional publishing, could find other readers that read like me. And then they would enjoy it, because like you said about Robert Jordan, and I love Robert Jordan, there are tons of readers who not only want, but really very much look for and enjoy those long passages about, or even George R.R. Martin, in the way that he lushly describes the world that A Song of Ice and Fire inhabits. And I can enjoy that too, but I don't do it as much at all. And so I guess I have to kind of hope that the people who come to the book can find appreciation for the style that I guess, bringing to it.
Sure. I think when you're working with like we both want to do, like cutting down the details, like you're like, okay, I don't want to describe this entire dress, right? Like okay, I don't want to spend 400 words on the clothing in this scene. Like the challenge for us then is to be like, okay, you need to describe the clothing in 4 sentences, and it's got to be all telling details. And so that's what I try to do when I'm setting up when I'm setting up a sequence, because like you need to describe what the characters are wearing at a certain level. I mean, like as much as it's important to the story, you need to, and it's usually important to the story, at least to some degree. So it all comes down to boiling it down to those telling details, and if those details can tell you something, not only about just literally what is the character wearing, but how does what they're wearing impact how other people see them, how they feel about themselves, and then how other people actually treat them. So there's actually sort of there is a kind of poetry to it of being like, okay, I'm going to cut all the unnecessary stuff out of this to actually place you in the scene and make you feel what the scene feels like, which sometimes I think about this sometimes, and permit me a bit of a digression, and you can tell me if you think about this. Like sometimes I think like, okay, I can shrink this down to like 1 sentence of detail, and like, but I'm not sure how much I should like believe that readers are going to get it, or do I need to give space for them to sort of like absorb what I'm actually talking about here, like to actually fully hear me, or like okay, you're reading this fast, you're reading 400 words a minute, or whatever it is. Are you going to process this even if I use the perfect thing, or are you just going to be into the dialogue and completely miss that stuff? Do you ever think about that as you're writing?
Yeah, I think about it a lot, actually. And I guess my answer to that would be that I have no idea if this is sort of an odd thing that's a me thing, or if everybody just naturally does this and but doesn't talk about it as much. But when I've written the draft and I go back and read my draft, even if it's only a couple of weeks after I've finished the writing, I read and I've forgotten almost everything that I wrote. Like I have a very weird kind of memory. And so when I go back in, I maybe I'm very wrong about this, but I definitely feel as if I'm able to absorb that draft as if I am a reader and not the writer. And so what I tend to do, because that's how it feels to me, is I'll come across something and I'll be like, I don't get what's going on here. I don't understand that description, or I can't picture it in my head, or this beat, this either fighting beat or story beat doesn't make sense to me. And then I go and I try and change and adjust the draft based on how I'm reading it, because I know the sort of I remember reading, I think in Stephen King's On Writing book, it was like, you write the thing, you can put it away if you can, you put it away for 6 months, and then you come back to it, and now you're actually reading it like a reader. Well, I guess I have the memory of a goldfish, and I think that stereotype's actually not true in goldfish memories. But anyway, I have the memory of a goldfish. So after I've written it, I go back, and I'm just like, wow, I can't believe that just happened. And so I edit based on my read. That's how I do it.
Sure. No, that's fantastic. Like I think there's a like that's part of what writing is doing, and especially epic fantasy is we're constantly there's constant exposition, right? Like for those who don't know what exposition is, I'm sure you do, but for the listeners, like there's constantly explaining how the world works, what the history of the world is, what the philosophies are, what the people are wearing, how the action is going. Like there's this constant filling in of details, which is basically teaching. I mean, we're basically teachers in a lot of ways, and so as we're teachers, like we have to keep strongly in mind what the audience understands, and obviously we don't have the audience like right there sitting there with us, so we sort of have to like bifurcate ourselves to be like, I know what my guy is doing here, but I don't. The reader is not going to understand that, and I certainly get that in action sequences of like, how can I describe this as fluidly as possible? Like a movement. Like this can be tough sometimes, and maybe you can talk about this. Like a movement that you would be able to describe, or that you'd be able to show in like 3 seconds, like some martial arts movement. Like, okay, whoa, that was really cool. Like describing that on the page and having readers understand what's going on can be incredibly difficult. Like I can get stuck on making a martial arts movement a hold or a grapple like making it make sense to a reader, I can get stuck on that for 2 hours. Yeah. How do you approach some of those when you're writing action, and people have highly praised how you write action? How do you take on some of those challenges with making it visual, or when it's not a visual medium?
Oh, that's actually a great question. And I think I do it by having no idea what I'm actually talking about. And and
You're not supposed to admit that.
No, I shouldn't admit that. But it's actually kind of true, because I don't sword fight. And the majority of the violence in the book, the majority of the fighting in The Rage of Dragons is sword fighting. And so what I decided to do is tell the fight, describe the fight in a way that would make me feel the fight, that would feel the action and feel the beats and the moments, and have it flow almost like a piece of music to my eye when I'm reading the words. And so that way I take it almost as a novice watching the fight and dealing with it that way. And those are some of the most exciting fights for me to read back. And then the funny thing is, in book 2, I've trained for about a decade in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, on and off, but I've done it for a long time. It's a large part of just my overall kind of life experience. In book 2, there is a sequence, there's a little fight sequence that happens that actually uses judo. And so because I know how that move works, I struggled way more making that happen than I did with the sword fighting, because I tried to actually break it down and so that you could understand it in the exact sort of mechanical way that it works. And so I believe it to be accurate on the page, to the point where a judoka could look at it and go, yeah, I know exactly what that move is and how it happened and why it worked. But it's tricky because it didn't feel as if I had done as well with that little piece as I had done with the sword fighting that I don't actually practice. Because the sword fighting I came at more emotionally, and whereas with something that I had a knowledge of, I started to intellectualize the process too much, and I think maybe sometimes you can move away from as much of the emotion as you would otherwise want to inject into that moment.
Gotcha. That's actually brilliant. I really like that. I like the approaching the fighting as feeling. Like, how does this make you feel? How does it make the character feel? Who's depending on how close the camera is over their shoulder or inside their head. Like that's that's a really great approach. Because with the second part, there's this saying that I'm not going to get exactly right, but like when writers do a lot of research on something, and it's like, I suffered for my art, now you get to suffer for my art. like we can study so much and we can learn so much that we just forget that what we're telling is a story, and it's like, this is to move you, this is to hit you emotionally, and so I totally get it. I had seen I'd seen this amazing move on YouTube. I was watching cool martial arts stuff, and I was like, oh god, I got to use that. And when I broke it down and was trying to explain exactly what the guy did, and the move literally takes like 9/10 of a second, and I'm like, how do I describe this dang thing? Like, his leg goes here, and then his other leg goes here, and like, oh, the guy tries to stand, and the second part of it was a mixed martial arts thing, but the second part of it was into grappling, and and like, why doesn't the guy pick him up and slam him? Oh, he stops the guy's ankle so the guy can't step backward to get the base to pick him up, and it's like, okay, I could spend 2 pages on this stupid move. It takes less than 1 second. Oh my gosh, what do I do with that? So I think you're really right to focus on the feelings of it, to get that side. So I like that a lot. To touch on a question or a thing from earlier, like that thing of keeping the reader in mind versus ourselves in mind. Like there's a gap between what readers and writers know of our characters, what we know of the world, what we know of the whole scope of human history, and I think that can become really difficult. And I don't know why I'm going off on this. Sorry, tangent, but I'll try to be quick. When I was writing Lightbringer series, which is 10, 11 years I was working on the books, like I actually did have to keep in mind something that I had earlier criticized Robert Jordan for, and that was like I had fallen. It's very easy for an author to fall in love with characters that you know a lot about. You know everything about them. You know why they did this or that, and you understand them. You love them, and not understand that there's a distance in what the readers care about. And like if you haven't given the readers a reason to care about this character, and the character does something unpleasant, the first thing you see of that character, like readers are gonna hate him, right? And you're like, but wait, you know, like why wouldn't you love this character? You need to know all these things. So that's a tension that I always have to keep in my mind. Like as I guess this fits into the exposition bit we were talking about before. Like what do I know and what does the reader know? And am I introducing the reader to these things in a smooth manner that affects them emotionally the way I hoped it does. So as you are as you're writing a kind of a breakneck paced fantasy, how do you approach introducing your readers to the wider world? Like you start with this huge battle sequence. How do you how are you weaving in all the other stuff without slowing down, without slamming the brakes on the narrative for readers? How do you think of doing that?
Well, I guess what I do is because I do outline, and my outlines end up being about 20% of the finished product. So if I write a 500-page book, about 100 pages of that is outline. What I do is I write the outline, and it's written in enough detail that it reads basically like a bullet-pointed version of the story. And I will read through the outline. Once it's all written, I'll read through the outline over and over and over again until, and I'm adjusting and adjusting until there are no points that stall me out, until there are no points in the outline that make me go, oh, what's this and why is this here? And so I think what I try to do is front load a ton of the drafting work into the outlining phase. And so once the outline can be read front to back, and it's basically, again, about 100 pages, front to back without stalling me out, so that all the world building little elements are hopefully woven into enough of the story. And it's still a struggle because what we're trying to do with epic fantasy is introduce readers to a secondary world. And sure, anything that's not specifically described, most readers will tend to believe is the same in our world as in the secondary world, but there's tons of things that we want to introduce to them. There's tons of things that we want to describe. So I do think that I'm still trying to find my way most clearly into having those moments of exposition weave absolutely seamlessly into the story. But what has helped me in my still very, very early career stages is to do that outline and to try and make sure that there's no bumps in that. So when I'm drafting, hopefully it feels the same. So now I absolutely have to ask this of you, because you've written this massive, excellent series with tons of world building. How have you done that? And how do you keep all the information in your mind from book one into the final book in the series? What have you done to sort of make that work?
Well, I like to answer this question like as honestly as I can. And I'm just a genius.
Love it. Okay.
I keep it all in my head. Everything's totally distinct. It's all there from day one. Like as soon as I thought of the book, it just sprang fully formed out of my head. And it's taken 11 years just because I don't want to work too hard just writing the words down. I'm having playtime. I wrote my first 5 books or something in Microsoft Word, and I just did millions of notes, and like it was so hard to find world building notes and snippets of action that I thought would be cool, little bits of magic and possibilities of dialogue, and it was a forest. I mean, it was just a mess. And now I sort of do the same thing. But I've been working in Scrivener, this writing program, basically for writers,
Love Scrivener.
for the last for the last few books, and it's so much. It's really helpful to me. Like one of the things that Scrivener does is like I used to have a physical cork board Like I would like put because I do these multi-point of view fantasy novels, and one of the big things is with balancing the pacing of those novels of multiple points of view is like figuring like, have I been away from the characters that readers probably care most about for too long? Like I remember reading books and being like, I don't care about these characters. Could we get back to the other guy? Or like, okay, they're fine, but like, where's the meat? My favorite thing is this guy, and I want to spend time with this guy, or this girl's so cool. Can we please go back and be with her? So like I would visually like color code my cards and put them on my table, and like I'd move them around and be like, well, what flow of action works best here? And that's something that Scrivener actually allows me to do digitally, which is so nice. And it also like if you grab the scene and you pull it to a different place in the book, like the words also go along with it. So like the whole scene goes along with it. Where with Word, I would be like, okay, chapter 36 is now this. I'd have to cut and paste. Okay, is this the right place to put it? Did I remember to paste that? Oh crap! What if I didn't paste it in? And so I do a lot of things with like I do like for the pacing or for seeing how the world's being built, like seeing it visually, up on a 27-inch monitor or whatever you can have, and like I literally have colors so that I can see. Okay, I haven't had a blue scene for a while there. Like we haven't been with that person for a while. And then mostly it's like a god awful mess, and and that's the the things you're not supposed to admit. It's like man, I do a lot of things and then I make mistakes. I forget stuff from earlier in the books, and I'm like, that one guy with the thing who does the thing, and like I used to get derailed and I go looking for who that was, and I'd be, oh yeah, that's his name. Gosh dang it, how did I forget that? And like now when I'm writing, I will just I'll put a note, that one guy with the thing, and then I'll just keep writing. When I'm writing. Other times I'll leave notes in there for myself, like I feel like I talked about this thing. Go find the place where I talked about this thing before, because the problem that I have is not, well, like after you get past about 1 million words, it's like there are so many details to take care of, to hold in your brain. And even if you're really good at that, you have to remember not the thing you made up. So like I might have made up a character, and like I don't really like this name, but I'm just not getting a better name right now. And so fine, I'll just leave it as that. When you're making up hundreds of names, you're not going to love all of them. And I go along, I'd get to, I'd spend 1.5 years on it or something, or a year, send it off the editor. We'd work through it a few times. And then on the last time that we worked through it, I'd be like, oh, here's a name that's a lot better. I changed the name, and like, well, now that's the name that's the real name. And like, I have to like wipe, forget that she was called this, for 1.5 years. You got to remember what she was called in the last month. And so I have a lot of things where like, I mean, I ran into a few things late in the series where I was like, oh, this connects brilliantly with that one thing that I wrote in book 1. I went back and looked for it, and I was like, oh yeah, that was a loose thread that I hadn't tied to anything. So I deleted it. And I'm like, no, that's been in my brain for 9 years, but I forgot I deleted it out of book 1. So it's for me, it's, I wish I were a super organized thinker. I mean, I do remember a lot of stuff, but there's a lot of notes. And then there's a lot of like, oh, I thought I said that, but I said this thing instead, or I changed my mind on something on draft 7. And so I need to go back and fix that. So actually like the rewriting process, like I feel for guys like George, because the rewriting process gets much more difficult with each additional book that you add to a series. Like it's just sort of an exponential curve at a certain point where you're like, wow, I now have to check this against 12 different things, and that's it's really hard. Yeah, sorry.
No, yeah, I was going to say that like that's the thing that amazes me the most about some of the longer series like yours is that I'm now writing book 3, and the amount of information that I kind of have to store in my head. And I see that Krista Evans in the chat wrote that they love Scrivener as well, and I love it for this because I clip. Whenever I write a new character, with the instant a new character appears on the page, I then often, if I'm not in a complete flow, I pop out and I go and I have a character section in Scrivener and I write the quick description of that character. And if I have art or something, I'll grab it from wherever and actually copy paste the art into that portion and then keep going. So there's a living sort of overall document. And the other thing, I don't know if Scrivener will start crashing on me eventually, but I have all the books so far in one file. So book 1 is attached to book 2, is attached to book 3, and they all exist in that document. So I can actually go and say, I can do a search and replace or a control find and find something from book 1 while I'm working on book 3. So Scrivener Literature and Latte, the company that makes it, did a fantastic job as far as, I mean, as I'm concerned in the way that I work. But it still is amazing to me because even with all of that organizational capabilities built in, again, I'm in book 3 and you wrote way more and your books are meatier. I can't. It boggles my mind to think of the amount of information you have to store and hold on to maintain continuity, to maintain flow, and readers. I mean, even for me as a reader, like I'm watching The Flash with my son every night. We're going through all the seasons and we're having a blast. It's a lot of fun. After this, we're probably going to go watch some before he goes to his first day of school tomorrow. The point is, they'll start doing things in The Flash because now we're in season 5, and I'm like, nah, guys, come on, you just use flash time right there. Just use flash time, or how the Flash consistently runs up to the scene and has to stop in front of the bad guy, the meta bad guy, and go, I am now here. And I'm like, dude, please do not do that. Just go put the meta handcuffs on that guy and get the situation. And so it's weird because it's a great show. I'm not blasting the show. I'm having a good time watching it. But it's just interesting because as a viewer, you start to you dive into the world in a way that I think creators have maybe a slightly harder time doing. And the rules of the world, the reality of it becomes very much fixed in your mind, and you can live it so that when a character in the story doesn't do something in the most optimal way, given the rules that have been set before, as a audience member, you go, that doesn't make sense. Why would you do that? And so it's sort of hard to keep up with the reader or the audience member in that way as a writer, at least in my experience so far.
Yeah. I always expect readers to come up to me and like be like, oh, you said this thing, but because of this thing, you screwed that up. And you know, like I always expect to really get busted on that question, but it hasn't really happened yet. Like there have been things where readers have done gotchas to me, and I'm like, that's not actually a gotcha because of you know this other thing. But it's like there's also become stuff like there's reasons where like I think it's important not to argue with the nitpicking reader in the text. You know, like you can't explain every little thing. It's like, I could explain why he doesn't do the optimal thing, but that would take us 3 paragraphs, and we are right in the middle of a fight scene, and we can't have those 3 paragraphs because that breaks the flow for the other 99 out of 100 readers. Like I actually have to have a thing up in here in my head of like why he doesn't do the thing or why he doesn't think of it. Like sometimes the hero doesn't think of the optimal thing to do. You know, like they have blind spots. But it's sort of frustrating when you've been on the other side because, you know, when you write a series that's super long, you'll eventually be on the side where readers are trying to bust you. Like to be like, yeah, I thought that out, but and then you can't really defend yourself on the internet because that just that doesn't go well. That doesn't go well for authors. So yeah, I mean, I could talk tons more about this, but I see I have, with my very long answers, surprise, pushed us to 4:40 or whatever time, 40 minutes, and we haven't hit the questions yet.
Oh, let's do it.
So I'm going to mess with my my computer for one moment because I hope I don't screw anything up by doing this. But how about you pick out a question and answer it, and hopefully by the time I plug my computer in, because my battery is almost dying, I'll be back.
Okay, no worries. Just looking for a quick question here, and okay. So without having actually pre-read this, I just see it's the most highest upvoted one, and I'll read it out and I'll answer, and then you can answer as well. Once you've identified that there's a particular area of writing that you want to improve on, for example, romance plots, how do you go about improving that skill? Are there a bunch of vignettes in your worlds that you'll nefariously package as a short story collection one day? By Joey Lithgow. Thanks, Joey, for the question. For me, what I think I would do is try to read more in that, try to read more books that tend to do that thing that I'm trying to improve on. If it's a romance plot, I would probably try and read romance books that maybe are still epic fantasies and figure out how are they doing what they're doing, what makes it work better, and then from that try to identify what I connect with as a reader the most within that thing that they're doing to make it work. Because just because something works or works well, I still want to identify with it personally, because my ultimate goal is to write what I would enjoy reading. So I do definitely research in that way by trying to dive deeper into books that do the thing better. And on to you.
Yeah. So can you still hear me?
I can.
Okay. Good. Sorry. I think you have exactly the right point. I would look for, if I were specifically working on a romance subplot, or especially if you're writing a subplot and you're like, this doesn't seem that good, which is a valid thing to think about your own writing, and is really helpful because that's where you need work. Like I think going even to those genres, it's like romance sells a ton of books because they do something right, and it might not be the thing that you like the most. But they do their thing really well. So find somebody who's noted for their romantic plots, and then look at it and have some humility. Like, especially God, like people can be really nauseating about how they treat romance, like it's second class fiction, and like, oh, 90% of it is crap, and like 90% of everything is crap, right? I think that's Sturgeon's law. It's like you can pick up fantasy and go, oh, all fantasy is crap because look at this random fantasy, it's mediocre. Well, that's the definition of mediocre. So pick out good romance, and you can do that by using Google and then study it. Like be like, okay, how is this character introduced? What, like, oh, this is a difficult man, or whatever. Like, how is this difficult man introduced in such a way that he's still appealing? Like, romance actually does a really great job of balancing that character type. Like, this guy's a jerk, but you can tell he's kind of got a heart of gold. That's a thing romance does, and you're rooting for him, but he's a jerk, but you're rooting for him, but he needs her. Whatever it is. Like there's a lot of things that other genres do well that fantasy doesn't typically do well, because we don't live or die by it. It's like readers will often forgive something weak in one genre's plotting, like you're reading a legal thriller and the characters are kind of cardboard. Doesn't matter. You'll forgive it. Like you're not there for the characters. You're there for the rising stakes and the rising tension and all that. So I think as an artisan, as a writer, as craftsperson, like you can study stuff that other people do well and go, they do that amazingly well. What can I learn from them? And then you'll get better. Yeah. So I'm right there with you, Evan.
Yeah, no, I love that answer.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. How did you find your? This is from Jake. It's got 7 upvotes. So one of the higher ones. How did you find your voice in your writing? Did it come naturally, or did a favorite author or person inspire the way you write your novels? Evan, will you take that first?
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Jake. I think that what I did is, when I was first writing, I read a bunch of books. I've been reading my whole life in science fiction and fantasy, love the genre, and I started to try and mimic voices of writers that I loved. That was my first go at it, and I tried to kind of do that in the very beginning with writing Rage of Dragons, and it didn't quite work. And then I went, you know what? I was kind of freed because I didn't have that traditional contract. I didn't know that anybody would read what I was writing, and so then I basically said to myself, I can't mimic somebody else. I'm just going to write something that feels good to me. And this kind of goes along with what Brent was saying a little bit earlier with romance and the different kinds of plots and books and how different genres can get away with different things. The word good or great writing gets thrown around a lot, and I'm a little bit annoying about the way I view this, because I think that, like Brent was kind of sort of saying there, good depends on what you like. Good depends on so many different variables that what one reader will absolutely love and adore and think is completely brilliant, another reader will not be able to stand. And all you need to do to see that is go to your favorite book that you think is practically flawless and look at all the one-star reviews. And some of them will be trolls, but a lot of people will be like, they'll be legitimately pouring their heart out about why they cannot stand this thing that you love. And so in terms of voice, I just decided very, very early on in the process, for good or ill, and maybe I'm very wrong about this, I'm open to admitting that, but for good or ill, I was going to write something that I would love, that when I read it back as in my reader hat on and not my writer hat on, I'm going to be like, this is amazing to me. And I've also feel like it defends me a little bit, or shields me a little bit from some level of criticism, because if someone goes, you know, when somebody tries to criticize the writing, so far as I can be in love with what is happening, I kind of feel like I'm on the right track, because I'm not so unique and individual that there won't be other people who like what I like. There, for example, with fan fiction, a lot of people try to say, well, fan fiction isn't at the level of other fiction, but there are whole swaths of readers who adore fan fiction and go into that and get out of it exactly what they're looking for from writing. So, you know, I try to never think about good or bad writing. There's just writing that can please. And my core audience is myself, because I only ever know myself. So I try to write in the voice that pleases me the most. So just, that's, again, I could be very wrong. This is one person talking, but that's how I kind of do it. Brent, what do you think?
I think with voice, I think I am very, I'm still very impressionable, which is sort of a funny thing. Like I actually have, I have trouble reading other fantasy at all, because I absorb so much of whatever I'm reading at the moment, and it comes straight back out. Like I'm like sucking it in, and then I'm like, wait, did I just hold on? That's hewing too close to this, and so I'm a very sensitive reader. I guess I'll say I talk sometimes about, like, sometimes that's great when you're reading, you know, Terry Pratchett, and then for the next 2 weeks, like, everything you write has this wry British sense of humor, and it's like, okay, that's fine, but like if you're reading all of George R.R. Martin, and then, you know, you're sitting down and writing, and you're like, it seems like some things are really familiar here, like that could be good or it could be bad. So I'm I'm pretty sensitive, but like I think that does, like, over time and over many words, like that becomes less of a problem. Like it your voice just emerges. It like I think when you're chasing having a voice, or like this, for like when you've studied it in college classrooms too much, where you're like, oh, look at their voice, like you can get really fixated on how this person does things, and then like, oh, well, what's my voice, and it's like, man, your voice is just how you speak. It's like you can use it, like, just like our actual voices, you can use it better or worse. You can use it in different registers for different things, but like there is a way you will construct a sentence. And you know, like in my writing, sometimes I will have these compound complex sentences that are 100 words long, and it's like, oh geez, you know, like do I need to break that up? And it's like that's okay. It's okay to have those really long sentences every once in a while, and then especially if it's fitting the characters or the setting, and then it's okay to have 2-word sentences and sentence fragments, and not get hung up at all on grammar. And I kind of do both of those things, and those just fit into my voice. And there are typical ways that you'll set things up. There's typical ways that you will describe things, and some of that is totally fine, and some of that is like, okay, I got to make sure I'm not doing the same thing all the time, like that I'm still growing. But I think of voice as just an emergent quality. Like the more you learn about fantasy, or the more you learn about writing, the more those things are going to come through, and the more you're going to stretch those things. Like, can you hit that high note? One of the things I remember reading about Homer, one of the reasons people have loved Homer for what is it? At least 2,800 years now, is that he can go from the gritty, brutal, like the spear went through the guy's mouth and knocked his teeth out and knocked his helmet off as it went out the back of his head.
Love it.
On to describing tender love between a husband and his wife who hasn't seen him for 20 years and who are trying to reconnect. And he will shift in how he in how he describes those things, obviously, but it's still his voice. So like when people say, "Oh, Homer's a bunch of people" or whatever, I'm like I see one voice in when I read Homer, and like, yes, obviously there was a huge tradition, and he was picking up stories that had been told before, et cetera, et cetera. But like, to me, it feels like one person. So I think chasing your voice is a mistake. Being true to yourself, that's totally different. And what you're talking about, Evan, like being like, I'm gonna do a thing like what you're talking about is like taking off those other people's clothes. Like, I tried on this jacket and that's not me. Like, taking that out, that's different than chasing your own voice. That's like, okay, I'm gonna tell a story, and I think that's more honest, and I think it when it's closer to who you are as a human being, other people are going to resonate with that more. I just think.
Yeah. I feel like also, like, you're never ever going to please everybody. So, and this is an old saying, but you're not going to please everybody. So please yourself. At least please yourself, if you can.
Yeah.
Okay, I see one that says it's from Peter V. Brett. So to you there, how would you describe the taste of your readers' tears?
Well, to keep it with the ancient Greeks, ambrosia and nectar. It's
oh man.
Over to you, Evan, because I can tell that's a very serious question from our friend Peter Brett. So
there were a few delicacies in this world, but a reader's tears are among the finest of them. So, oh goodness.
Well, like honestly, there is something really great when a scene that you meant to be emotionally moving was for other people. Like I sit here and I cry at the keyboard, and it feels really funny when you got to go answer the door and you're like, sorry, I'm just having a moment. Like, what? Yeah, I made up a pretend people and I'm crying about them right now.
Yeah.
Just give me a second. But like, people make it a joke, like we're sadists and masochists, and we're both. But when you really emotionally affect a reader, it tells you they were with you. So to me, that is actually kind of a beautiful thing. So and thanks, Peter Brett, for dropping in. Appreciate it. Let's see. Oh, here's one. I have strong feelings about these. Well, what is and you first, Evan, what is your opinion on writing groups? Those people who get together in the pre-pandemic days and share bits about the writing, excerpts or otherwise. What is helpful or detrimental in your experience? Gina asks. Thank you, Gina, for the question.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I have never done a writing group. I feel, I'll tell a story as quickly as I can. My entire creative sort of life, and my whole life I've worked in creative fields because I was creative director for a company, and before that, director and all the rest. It's always been group work, and it's always been sort of like gun for hire group work. I know this is not the same thing. We're talking about going to a writing group and sharing pieces, but I kind of feel like for once in my life, I get to tell something the way that I want to, and it gets to come out of me entirely. And maybe that's a little selfish, but I'm really enjoying that process at the moment. And I think that to share a little bit too early, for me at least, would open me up to criticism or open me up to other voices coming back about the story I'm trying to tell a little bit earlier in the process than at least I would be comfortable doing. Now, your mileage may vary completely with that, and everyone's going to be different. But I think I like that sort of slightly insular, sitting down, writing the whole thing, and then I get shared with alpha readers and the editor and that sort of thing. That currently is better. Maybe I'll change. What about you?
Well, I tried to find writing groups early in my career, and I was sort of ended up in that. I think Groucho Marx said something about any group that could take me, I wouldn't want to join. And the trouble was, like, I really wanted to be a professional writer, and like I was doing everything in my power to make that happen. And so it was like I would come into the writing group, it was once a month or something, and here I got 30,000 words, and everybody else has got like 1,000, and I couldn't ask them, can you read 30 times as much as what everybody else brought in?
Mm-hmm.
So instead, I would have to like bring bits and pieces, and that didn't work. But the trouble with writing groups is like, hey, some people writing groups work amazingly well for, but a lot of times they might give you terrible advice, and because they're the only outside thing you've ever heard, like you might take that advice. Like if you bring in a character that's just fascinating, they might be like, oh, that's such a fascinating character. You need to focus the whole story on them. It's like, but actually in the structure of a novel, sometimes a fascinating character is like you don't want to add too much of that. They're like salt here. And if you throw too much salt in, like they'll ruin the whole dish. But it's like, okay, a little bit of that is enough. It changes everything. I really want to learn more about this character, so I'm going to be looking forward to the next time I see them on the page. Well, that would be exactly the kind of thing that a writing group could steer you away from. At least a writing group that doesn't have professionally published writers in it. So I'm okay now that I never found a writing group, and I was really bummed because the writing life is so isolated. When I was writing, I was really bummed about that. So if you can find a great group, that's wonderful. Go ahead and do it. Do whatever you need to help you keep putting words on the page. It works really well for some people, and if you join a group and it's not the right thing for you, there's nothing wrong with you as a writer. It's okay to do it lone wolf. It's all right. Yeah,
I'm all about that. John. Okay, I'll throw one at you if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Krista Evans with 8 upvotes asks, what has been the greatest struggle with overlapping subplot lines trying to mingle with the main plot? How do you keep everything from getting muddled?
Well, for me, it's a lot of it has been chronology. Like when you separate out the plot lines, that's easy. When everybody's separated, that's also easy. And then when they come crashing back together, like for the main fight at the finale of your series, it's like weaving them in so that each group gets at least mention, that you show that they were there for a reason all along, that they come in, so that their impact, like obviously if you made them up, you should have been thinking about, I'm making these people up because they matter, and they matter means they have an impact on the main plot, not even just on one of the subplots. So bringing them back into the final book in a way that makes sense, where the readers and the other characters feel their impact on the same plot, but that comes in a timely way, so that you're not bogging down the pacing of the action, when readers are ready to have the big fight. It's like, okay, please do not stop my book for 30 pages so that we can talk about how everybody feels about seeing you again. Like there are some real things where it's for me with Lightbringer, in the Burning Way, it's like, wow, these characters could just easily sit around and talk for hours about how their last year has been, and they would love to do that, and some of the readers would love that too, but not all the readers, and the story is not about that. So figuring out how to give a nod to the emotional impact of like, hey, I haven't seen you for a year, or hey, I thought you were dead, without stopping all forward momentum. When you have a lot of characters and you have a lot of subplots, that was the hardest thing, was bringing those in, making them matter, showing how they mattered to the other characters, showing how they mattered to the plot, and not interrupting the flow of the story. That was what makes writing a finale to a long series feel like taking the SAT every single day. So Did you have some thoughts about that, Evan? As
Sure.
you weave together plots?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I think that when I was writing this series, one of the things I thought to myself, and a mistake that I made frequently as I was learning how to direct and trying to get better at the craft of directing, was biting off more than I could comfortably chew. And then what happens is the end product, the end music video, doesn't look as good as it was in your head. And I was worried about that with writing as well. I had this grand story that I adored in my head. I didn't know if I was capable of actually bringing it out onto the page. So one of the things I did, I tried to strip away all the stuff that I didn't think absolutely had to be there. So when talking about subplots, I don't really have very many subplots in the book.
Okay.
It follows the main character primarily, and pretty aggressively follows the main character. There are a couple of other point of views that come in momentarily to lend perspective, and because they feel very important to me at the moment to have those other perspectives. But even again, to use The Flash, because it just sticks in my head as a show that I'm watching right now. One of the things I've noticed is that in Hollywood and in Hollywood writing, there's that common thing. It's in Save the Cat, the book. The B plot comes in at this point, and the B plot mirrors the theme of the regular plot and sort of wraps up at this point, and blah blah blah. And I've noticed that whenever all the B plots, and they do that in, for example, The Flash as a show, those are always the moments when I'm sitting down with my son and the B plot comes on, where I pick up my phone and I start doing this and I go on or whatever. And I'm not really paying attention because they're not pushing the actual plot that I'm sitting there for that 45 minutes to watch. They're not pushing that plot forward aggressively enough, at least for me. Now, maybe some of that is because I've seen enough stories in my life and I've gotten old enough that I can take in the information without fully paying attention. But I guess the point for me is I lose focus and attention as a audience member during a lot of those moments. And so in the writing of the book, the story that I wanted to tell, I said, well, do I need them? Absolutely. And my answer, and it won't be the right answer for all readers, my answer was no. And so there are few subplots. There is one primary plot with little intersecting moments and perspectives, but that also helps with pacing. Because as you said earlier, Brent, there's often the case where you jump to other points of view, point of view characters, and you feel like, well, I don't love this point of view character as much as some other character, and now this is slowing down the overall story for me. My take was, and that's happened to me a lot as well in a lot of the big epic fantasies. My take on this was, I'm going to give you a main character. You will either like him and be happy to spend the entire story with him, or you will hate him and you will put the book down and no harm, no foul. So that was sort of my take on that.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So I with my very long answers, I have exhausted our time. So how about we hit one last question, and I'll since I've been so selfishly talking probably for the bulk of the time, why don't you pick the question and we will wrap it up with that, because I would just love to talk with you for another hour, but that's probably a bad idea. So.
Let me see. Oh, that's okay. So this is a good one because a lot of people think my character's a jerk, and I want to hear your answer because maybe you can help me, Brent. So okay, how do you find the balance between wow, this character's a brat jerk, and wow, this character's a brat jerk, but I love him? Open question to both authors, but from experience, Kip and Durzo could both have been really great in characters because of their unlikable qualities, but ended up loving them. Do you leave this up to your beta reader to decide? What is too much? By Gina. Yep. Thank you for the question, because this is going to help me to get Brent's answer.
So I think I'm a terrible person to ask this this question of.
I'm relying on
like I had an interesting experience with Durzo Blent in the Night Angel trilogy, where I was not prepared for how much readers liked him. Like he terrorizes the main character in the first scene. I mean, he scares the hell out of him, and then very early in the book, he literally beats a child. And I was just certain, like the main character, he almost beats him to death, and I'm like, nobody is going to like this guy. Like he's the guy you don't like but fascinates you, and instead readers loved him. So I don't know what is wrong with people. I do think there's things that we it's a really interesting psychological point of like we will forgive characters of things in fiction that we would never forgive them of in real life. And for us as writers, like we can play with that. But it's still weird. It's still weird to me. Like anybody who beats a child is just a child abuser. He's not a fascinating guy who's troubled about his past. You know, you're just like, no, terrible human being. I don't want to learn any more about this guy. So that actually surprised me. There is certainly the sense that, you know, the character's got a heart of gold, you know, somewhere way down deep, or that this was a good guy who went terribly off the rails with Durzo. With Kip, I think I jumped in with maybe a bit too grandiose feelings about my own skills. I wanted to start with a couple of characters when I started the Black Prism. I wanted to start with two characters who were really hard to like. One is the character who, you know, he's fat, he's like, people don't like him, he's the total outsider, he doesn't do anything right, he's awkward. And then the other character is actually equally hard to you know, really associate with, because he's actually got everything, and he's handsome, he's rich, he's powerful, he knows it, he pushes people around and makes them like it, and like he just has everything, and there's nothing wrong for him. So I thought both those characters, I thought the trick would really be, and the challenge for my writing skills, which I'm always trying to figure out new ways to challenge myself, which means new ways to fail. What was, can I make readers love both of these characters as I bring them kind of to intersect? So you know, spoiler, the guy who has everything, he's going to lose it, and the kid who has nothing, he's going to gain, well, a lot, not everything. So I think I probably overplayed. I think I probably should have made Kip a little more attractive at the beginning. Because there certainly were characters who are readers who did not like him, and were like, he's whiny, and I had readers who were less forgiving of 15-year-olds than I thought they should be. So I think every once in a while I did stuff that was pretty accurate to the psychology of a 15-year-old, and people were offended by that. Oh, these young kids, they have such childish senses of humor. You know, okay. You know, have you been around 15-year-old boys, or 17-year-old boys for that matter, or grown men for that matter? So I don't know exactly what I did. Oh, the lights in my room are dimming without my God. That's just the world telling me it's time. So I don't know exactly what I did, except I tried to give characters who are doing the right thing, who are trying to do the right thing a lot. And I really need to fix these lights. Pardon me, everybody. Evan, how about you take on the answer so I can segue smoothly?
No worries. If you can still hear me, one of the things that I actually very much liked about getting the chance to read about someone like Kip is that, you know, as a Black man myself, we don't often get to see the main heroes or the important characters in narrative looking like me, right? And that's part of the reason I wrote my book the way I did. So it was really exciting for me to see a character like Kip, who we don't get to see characters who look like Kip that often in the hero role, and there's no reason that we shouldn't. And so there's a power for me as a reader in being able to enjoy and see a character like that achieve so much, because typically in the stories that we've been reading for hundreds of years, we don't often show those characters getting to do that. And for me, at least, that's a lie. It's a lie that the different people that look different, that behave different, that have different value systems, whatever, can't also be the heroes or heroines of the story. So, you know, again, it's funny because I guess because the tradition is there, you did kind of play on hard mode, but at the same time, by playing on hard mode, for me as a reader, there's so much more reward, because you get to let people who don't often get to see themselves and that role of being able to change the world around them. you give them an opportunity to see that and believe more clearly that they can do that. So I value that, and I thank you for taking life on in hard mode, because you could have gone the easy way. Right? So.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I wanted to I wanted to have Kip be who he was. You know, and then as he changes, like I didn't want there to be the montage, right? Oh, there's the training montage, and now the fat kid, he's lost 100 pounds, you know, and here we go. Like I wanted to, I wanted this big kid, this outsider, this kid who doesn't fit in, at least partly for racial reasons in his world, like who didn't fit in. Like I wanted to see that kid progress, and I wanted to show that somebody like that could also be a hero. This outsider who didn't have anything going for him, came from a rough background, doesn't know what to do, often is unsure of himself. You know, like even this kid can find a better self, and can push into that, and can you know become great in all the ways that matter. So how do you do it with your characters? And your answer, that was beautiful what you said, by the way. So I really appreciate you talking about who can be heroes and stuff. That was profound. But in your books, to wrap it up for us, how have you taken on the challenge of making readers really connect with Tao, right?
Yeah, I think that, and I don't know how successful I've been. I do know that a lot of, or one of the criticisms that readers who maybe don't enjoy the book as much have is they find Tao to be frustrating, a frustrating person. And I guess to answer the question about how you make a character like that likable or appealing, I wrote a character that I could understand, who with their failings, with their inadequacies, I could understand and believe, and that in every decision that Tao makes, given where he is and what's happening around him and his context, I can understand. I think a lot of readers sort of tend to feel, or again, not a lot, but readers who criticize the character tend to dislike that he is so rash or brash and he makes decisions that seem foolish in the moment. But I drew on what I understood to be the nature of behavior when one has been oppressed or seen as less than throughout their whole life. There are often very few opportunities to make good decisions. When you make what is in quote unquote a good decision, it often does not still reap the reward or results that that good decision should make. And so what often happens is that you find that with that sort of structure of cause and effect, or I do the good thing, the good thing happens, people behave a little bit differently. They can react differently to circumstances. And so Tao as a character is very true to life to me. And when I read him, yes, he is frustrating. Yes, he's doing things that you're like, why would you do that, for heaven's sake? Why? But I can identify with that because of my background, because of my understanding of human beings, the people that I see in my life. And so I wrote somebody that I would understand, that I could appreciate, that I could like. And I think readers do like him, but there are also that other group who are like, this is frustrating. And I can appreciate that too. Like it's a valid response if you don't view him the same way that I do. It's a completely valid response. So the short answer would be write somebody that you can appreciate, and there will be readers out there who will appreciate them too.
Yeah. I think there's something too about like, if you have an emotional connection to a character, like, and it sounds cheesy, but I think if you find what you love about this character and why you love to be with them, like even if they're really frustrating, like your love will bleed through, and readers will end up responding to that character because you're like, man, this guy makes terrible decisions, but I love him anyway. And like, don't let the guy around a sword when he's been drinking, or whatever it is, or like, oh my God, I can't believe he said that. But that's who he is. But he'd also give you the shirt off his back or whatever. Like if you feel those things for the character, I think it's readers are going to catch that from you. So I think if you write with passion, as Evan and I do, I think I think readers care about that. It just speaks directly to their hearts, and you're going to find success as you know, obviously as Evan has and is doing so. You're launching an exciting career here. I mean, you've been launched, I guess. Your next book is coming out soon, right?
It is. Fires of Vengeance comes out November 10th. And so
Okay.
we're really excited about that. Really excited to see readers get a chance to follow with the book. Your paperback is coming out very soon. If it's not, when is the paperback?
The paperback is out now.
Yep,
And
Give a copy.
everyone, you can get that with Tubby and Coos. We'll send you a cool looking book plate, and you guys can also get Rage of Dragons from Tubby and Coos. And be on the lookout for Evan's. Wait, I have to ask, because I saw, is this the forthcoming book? Is this the end of the series, or is this, because I saw book 1 of 2 somewhere on Amazon, or is it going to be 3 or 4?
There's 4 books coming. You're exactly right, though. On Amazon, it does say book 1 of 2. They just update it as it goes, I guess. But yeah, there are 4. I'm currently writing 3. And very, very excited to keep getting into this world and the story. And I can only imagine the immense amount of relief and pride you must feel at actually being done. Or maybe fear. I don't know, because now you got to, I don't know.
It feels amazing to have finished. I thought it was going to kill me, and it feels really great. And then it's also like there is that okay, what now? Like I spent my 30s writing that series. So I'm some readers asked about it. I'm working on another book set in the Night Angel world, and there will be some overlap of characters, and at some point I'll hype it up by telling people more. But I'm trying to actually be on the down low, and like readers accuse me of like, oh, you're playing games and stuff. I'm actually trying not to start the hype train, but nobody believes me. So that will be forthcoming. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Sorry I was so long-winded, Evan. It was really a pleasure to speak with you.
It was amazing. Such a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, and we'd like to say thank you to Tubby and Coos. Please order your books through them. They'll get just cool looking signed book plates. Thank you also to Ellen with Orbit. It's been a pleasure, everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you.